Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar, brought to you by Techstrong and Plutora. My name is Cody J. Brown. I'm the host of Techstrong Learning. We have an exciting presentation ahead, but first I have just a couple of housekeeping notes to cover. First, today's session is being recorded, so if you miss any of our discussion, or you'd like to rewatch or share with a friend, the on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude our live session today. If you have any questions, we want you to send those in using the Q&A tab on the right side of the screen. And that's also where you're going to find the chat tab, where we want you to engage with the rest of your fellow audience members. Let us know your thoughts throughout today's program. We do have two polls throughout today's program, one towards the beginning and another towards the middle. So we want your participation there. And I'll also point you in the direction of our handouts tab, where you will find our slides available for download for you to follow along. Finally, before we close, we will be giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so be sure to stick around till the very end. So our topic today is accelerating continuous security with value stream management. And joining me is Mark Hornbeek, CEO of Engineering DevOps Consulting, and Bob Davis, CMO at Plutora. Bob, Mark, thank you both so much for being here with me. Bob, I'll let you take it from here.
Excellent, Cody. Thank you very much. Mark, I want to start by thanking you for your time today on this webinar. I think we'll have a really great discussion. And in fact, for everyone, this is a really interesting topic, one that we have a lot to cover. We can handle questions along the way. It's probably the best, as Cody mentioned, so we'll keep a lookout for that. We also have an ebook available. Actually, surprisingly, maybe excitingly, we have 2 ebooks. One that is already available and written, which kind of introduces the topic of continuous security, and a second, which will largely cover the topic in a bit more depth that we're covering today. And that will be sent to all of you as soon as it's ready. And that will be a little bit later, probably early next month. So stay tuned for that, part 1 and part 2 of this great topic. And indeed, it is an important topic. Enterprises everywhere are seriously concerned with security. And timely enough, the RSA conference being next week, there's lots of topics in the news on security and on things that can go wrong and solutions to keep that from happening. What we're going to do on this webinar is actually talk in some amount of depth of a newer topic, at least to the world of security as we define it, and that's continuous security. So we're going to explain what that is. We're going to talk about why that's so important. We're going to then further provide guidance on how you can assess your requirements, what you might need, how you might go on a journey to button down the security from the moment the software is planned and the ideas are starting to flow to the time it's actually running in production. And that's really key, is spanning both the development all the way to the operations of your software, your applications, your infrastructure, really everything. And we're going to finally talk about how you can use value stream management platforms, a relatively new industry phenomenon, which is really available to help realize continuous security. It's remarkable how well it fits. So with that, I'm going to bring Mark into the discussion so that we can start to dive into this. Mark, why don't you give us a little bit more color on what we're going to learn today as you go through this topic?
Sure. Again, thanks for the opportunity to talk today, and appreciate the ongoing relationship with Plutora and DevOps.com. So the agenda really is, as you indicated, actually, we're going to discuss what is continuous security, how it differs from some of the other perspectives on security, coupled together with value streams and DevOps. It is different than DevSecOps, although a lot of folks get that a little confused. And why is it important, especially in this world where you have essentially new security events hitting the news weekly, pretty much? How do we apply value stream management to solve some of those security problems and pain points? You're also going to learn about what is needed to actually implement a solution based on a value stream management platform for continuous security, and we'll have some takeaways and talk about some next steps.
Right on. I think we actually, as we get to the end, we'll actually show a dashboard of what it might look like to look at a continuous security solution. So let's move into it. First of all, let's look at the problem. It's a big one, and as much has been done about security, it still remains a huge threat. Mark, you've got some real interesting statistics here. Why don't you kind of give us a walkthrough?
I've been doing this DevOps consulting work for quite a few years, and many of my clients are large enterprises and institutions and manufacturers and so on. And this security problem doesn't get easier. There's a need for some bigger solution to keep up with the ongoing series of threats, which continue to be alarming and growing. I mean, even in the last week, I noticed some additional supply chain attacks in the news with Rust and the GitLab CI pipeline attacks. 47% of attacks are pretty much, it can be pointed to organizations not prioritizing their vulnerability and patch management. Many of the attacks have to do with things that have been solved but haven't been applied across the value stream. So a lot of these attacks originate in the value stream prior to deployment. Things like SolarWinds, which was in the news a lot, Kaseya, Log4j, Spring4, Shell. That type of attacks, at least reported, were tripled in 2021. The attackers are getting smarter and smarter about how to, inject a breach into the value stream that ultimately leads to vulnerabilities getting distributed to thousands of victims that are recipients of the releases from those value streams. So unpatched vulnerabilities cause roughly half of those attacks, exposing a lot of problems in the patch process. So coupling the operation side defensive type security strategies with value stream side preventative strategies is really critical. On the operations side, they leverage it through phishing and ransomware, of course, is again a major alarm with the newer cloud-based products and Docker focused targets are occurring. In general, it's getting easier in some ways for cloud environments to be impacted by malicious attacks, and there's a lot of concerns. So we really need a comprehensive continuous security approach. DevSecOps alone is not enough, and the traditional infrastructure ops side defensive type security, perimeter securities are not enough either. It's really, we need a solution that combines smartly the both sides ops and pre-deployment activities for security controls. So you need a continuous effort basically between developers, security teams, and operations teams working together, executing more of a value stream wide end-to-end approach to security. That's basically the main theme of the talk.
I think that the supply chain threats are particularly severe in the sense that all the security talk I hear, as I've dug into this, and as you've started to introduce me to these concepts, and I've looked at them more deeply, I find the dialogue around DevSecOps to be quite rich. I find a lot of options and dialogue around production. I don't see a lot of things that are spanning both, and that seems to me to be critical relative to solving problems like a supply chain, which is targeting a development environment and making it come alive in an operations environment. So when I span those two environments, I suspect there's issues. Would that be fair to say, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like DevOps itself. I mean, there's ops in the word DevOps, but in reality, DevOps doesn't inform very much about what happens after deployment to production. And this is why we have the rise of SRE practices, where SRE is kind of the new ops that goes with DevOps. So continuous security is kind of like the new security that goes with DevOps. It has to be a more complete end-to-end solution. So this chart illustrates some use cases where vulnerabilities injected before deployment are exploited after deployment. Coding errors, importing vulnerabilities from open source or third-party codes, source code manipulations, repository manipulations. All of these things are happening before deployment, and then after deployment, they're exploited in the wild in the production environments of the organizations that accept that code in deployment. So there's a lot of damage, theft of code and data, personal threats as well, ransomware. The SolarWinds attack, again, is just one of the more famous of such attacks, but this type of attack is growing, where the bad actors have learned how to leverage this, the full end-to-end value stream to be more sophisticated. The scope of these attacks can span the entire value stream, before and after deployment, but the combination of the two is where we really need a solution.
Yeah. I think that, as people look to solve it, the challenges are notable, right? I mean, and they're not just the technology. This is interesting to look at it from multiple perspectives.
Yeah, this chart basically shows the scope of the challenges, which are escalating in a number of ways simultaneously. An April 2022 survey by Vector AI indicated that the combined effects of human challenges, growing threats, complexity, and business limitations are impacting the ability of organizations to deal adequately with security concerns. One of these organizations suffered a major incident over 12 months, 1 in 3, I should say, offering finger pointing, long hours of security teams having to work to do damage control, affecting team morale. It's causing a lot of burnout in the security industry. So clearly, we need some ways to address these issues easier. The current repertoire of security tools and practices are really not adequate. And this is kind of proving it. The traditional testing alone doesn't detect supply chain attacks, which often exploit trusted software artifacts rather than the vulnerabilities that are being targeted by the specific tools. So there are a lot of concerns here that are growing. What's the solution? We need the teams to work together, the security teams, ops teams, the development teams, relook at the different types of tools that are being used and tie them together through an entire end-to-end value stream approach, rather than looking at the individual parts of the value stream pre and post deployment and instead look at the combined situation as a team and build those together with tools that span the entire value stream, so detections can occur in operations and then addressed in a more orchestrated and automated way prior to deployment to get more efficiencies and hopefully relieve some of these people that are getting burned out in the security teams.
Yeah, and in fact, got to solve these problems. So the solution needs to embrace all of those areas in order to really get it to be fixed, doesn't it?
Yeah. So the solutions are needed to just as there are simultaneous growing threats, we need a solution that is comprehensive, that simultaneously overcomes the human challenges, the threats that are growing, the complexity growth, and the business limitations that we have to deal with. So addressing the challenges requires a comprehensive security solution, improving collaboration on the human side, smarter analysis of data across the entire value stream, not just looking at individual points of orchestration and automation of activities, so that you don't have everybody having to do everything more manually, and all at the speed of DevOps, which means we really need automated solutions. Security automation capabilities are needed for execution of detection processes, analysis processes, remediation processes, either with human intervention or without. There's just no way that individuals can keep up with these ongoing concerns without a more comprehensive, orchestrated, automated solution.
Yeah, and it all comes to bridge the gaps. I mean, the value stream management paradigm is all about providing visibility. It's all about providing, collaboration and built-in, synergy relative to the data that's collected and used throughout the entire value stream. So it's all about providing that visibility, overcoming the gaps in between the silos that exist, and simplifying that to be able to get a smooth delivery from the time a piece of software or an application idea is considered to the time it's delivered. That's the value stream management mantra. So security fits right into this. And if you think about it, it provides an ability to be able to see the security landscape all the way through the development process and the deployment process. So I look at this and I say, okay, I get what continuous security is. Mark, do people understand this?
I don't. I think it's growing in awareness. There's still an awful lot of talk about DevSecOps as if it's the solution to the world's security problems, and then of course the security folks still tend to focus more on what's happening in their defensive, operations side. But I think there's a growing understanding that there's a need for a more comprehensive solution. So there is no industry definition for continuous security. I mean, what I'm calling continuous security here is, is more than just DevSecOps. Some people refer to it as more of as a monitoring approach, but what I'm referring to here is continuous security is more comprehensive, where you're applying an end-to-end approach to security practices all the way from development, pre-production, and post-deployment into production. Software teams using DevSecOps, for example, are really concerned with making sure that their pipelines or CI/CD pipelines are delivering, fewer vulnerabilities to production. But the software operations team, even the newer model operations teams that are steeped in site reliability engineering practices, are more concerned about securing production environments after deployment. But meanwhile, the software security teams tend to be separate silos, focusing on their expertise and efforts on defensive production side security practices, with a growing engagement with software deliveries through recent DevSecOps practices. But the bad actors, they see these boundaries as opportunities, big cracks in the metaphorical organization castle walls, which are ripe for exploitive breaches, and that's why I think you're seeing more supply chain type attacks. So basically, I define continuous security as the combined set of DevSecOps security practices that reduce the chance of delivering vulnerabilities and defensive SRE security practices that protect software deployed to production, all supported ultimately by security experts as coaches.
And the power of connecting the dots all the way along that value stream is incredible. I've not seen continuous security defined this way by anyone but you, Mark, and I think it makes complete sense, in the same way that having that similar visibility just from a software dev point of view makes complete sense. Everyone buys that. So how about we do it for security? And I think this is a brilliant concept, and it comes to life in when you look at it from an orchestration and automation perspective, as shown on this slide. Oops.
Yeah, so the idea of combining security monitoring with automated responses isn't really new to security professionals and security tooling. There are at least 3 classes of security tools that have some amount of monitoring and orchestration combined. There's SIEMs, the SIEMs, security information management tools. They do aggregate data from multiple security systems to generate alerts. And the SOARs, the source security orchestration, automation, and response solutions, will engage a response engine across multiple tools. So they tend to gather data from multiple tools, whereas the SIEMs are more tool specific. And then extended detection and response, XDR solutions, are really looking at the different layers and silos and integrate some execution with that. However, none of those solutions really are targeted at the production operations environments for pre-production security controls like DevSecOps or continuous security cases that we're talking about, where we're really looking at trying to apply automation to what's happening in pre-deployment as a result of what's happening in production. So continuous security requires security monitoring and automation of actions across the entire value stream, from development through operations. So dashboards, like we talked about in a prior webinar for continuous security, can be combined with the orchestration and automation capabilities of a value stream management platform, for example, to address this more of an end-to-end problem that arises when you're dealing with things like supply chain attacks.
For sure. And again, incredibly important concept to eliminate those silos across the entire value stream. We've covered a little bit now on the definition and kind of what it is and what we're trying to achieve. I think we have a poll now, Cody. If you could pop that poll up, Yeah, there we go. So interested to understand your current familiarity with continuous security orchestration. Whether you really don't know, it's a new concept and it's something you want to learn more about. You have some knowledge, or maybe you have deep knowledge in DevSecOps or on the SRE production side on security orchestration and automation in production. Let's get a sense of the audience as to where you guys are on that continuum. I think it's really important to get a level set. Starting to get that data. Mark, what would you think where people are?
I think this one is going to be a little bit across the board. It's people from the security. If you're coming at it from a security expertise already or a security role, you probably have some knowledge of orchestration with security, given the tools they have available. But I doubt anybody's really got a lot of familiarity with what we're calling continuous security at the moment. I think it's relatively new, where we're applying orchestration automation at the entire end-to-end value stream, because it really requires a lot of collaboration between ops, security, and dev teams.
I think that this is actually really interesting, because there's almost 72%, about 72% have little to no knowledge of really what the concepts are around continuous security, which would make sense because it's a new concept, and thinking of security from soup to nuts, idea to cache, idea to operations and production is kind of a new concept, and seeing people that are familiar with one or the other also makes sense. That there's a lot of work going on in DevSecOps, there's a lot of work going on SRE side, but people that are really looking at both, not so much. In fact, 0%. So this is evidence that we're on the right track here relative to really looking at the benefits of tying these two concepts together, the operations side and the DevSecOps side. And for that matter, Mark, it's the security team as well, which are often separate and a shared resource across multiple teams. So I've really got 3 silos at some level between the different groups. And I think it's a really super important concept. Okay, this is great. Good, perfect. Well, let's dive in then, and we'll continue to the slides and start to actually talk about what this concept can come to life as with respect to leveraging value stream management. And this is, so Mark, you look at this as seeing value stream management sitting on top of a pipeline, sitting on top of a value stream with all of its capabilities around bringing in the information from the tools, providing collaboration across all the various silos of both development and operation, and sitting across the infrastructure. That's the core element of value stream management. Mark, how would security layer onto that?
Yeah, so the first time I was introduced to value stream management, I was impressed with the scope of it. I've been involved in building CI/CD pipelines and looking even integrating security controls into pipelines. But it occurred to me that having been in this DevOps world for a long time, the dev side and the ops side, despite all of the good efforts of DevOps and even DevSecOps, there's still a lot of silos, and especially security teams tend to be already overwhelmed enough with the things they normally do. So value stream management seems to me to be a way that we can tie all this together. And the value stream management platforms, they have the capability, the inherent capability. When I understood the platforms, I realized, wow, you've got end-to-end capability for collaboration, integration of any kind of tool, basically, as well, along with analysis capabilities and orchestration of workflows, both manual workflows as well as automated workflows driving the different tools. This is, finally, if you like, a capability that could pull it all together and implement a real, end-to-end continuous security, solution. More than anything else I've seen, most of the pipeline tools don't really go as far. And as application development accelerates, it's going to be imperative in my mind that we close this divide between DevOps, operations, and security. The cybersecurity team just don't have the bandwidth to do it on their own. I don't think that's going to change much, despite considerable investment in the cybersecurity. It's still just the complexity of the number of tools and the scope of it. I think it's got to be a collaborative effort. And the value stream management platforms, from what I have seen, are the, it's kind of like the only hope that I'm aware of that will pull it all together, that has the, that works at a layer above those pipelines, and not only one, but a service these days may be comprised of many simultaneous pipelines working in parallel. You really need something like a value stream management tool that platform that can pull it all together.
Yeah, I think value stream is perfectly well suited to really answering the bell on this problem. There might be worth just a real quick review, because I think when the light went on for me, it was when I was thinking about incidents in production, threats and what have you that people care about from a security point of view. And I think of the parallel with that, with incidents in production from the standpoint of quality issues, be they bugs or other matters that occur in production, that people care about. The defenders of production, the SREs, want to make sure that Sev1 bugs are fixed right away, that things are escalated into development, and that quality of software and the capabilities provided by the applications continues to improve. That's what value stream management is for. So the notion that a bug is an incident in production, as well as a threat is an incident in production, I can orchestrate and manage them in a very similar way. So we have, in case of value stream management, the ability within the platform, for example, to do root cause analysis of bugs. So if the VSM platform identifies a bug, by virtue of looking at a production tool, seeing a ticket, it can apply that ticket associated, I should say, to a release, to a build, all the way back to a user story or an epic, so that I can see where that bug is relative to the development teams, the testing, and all the other capabilities that are necessary for the development of that application. And it's automatic. It flows right in through to the views that the developers and the testing folks, QA folks, have of that release. And that can then be fixed. The developer commits it to a pipeline, and the platform orchestrates that out through to production, hands it off into the ops world, and we'll continue to monitor that root cause and make sure it works. In the case of security, that could also be true of seeing threats that are, these incidents pop up that aren't being captured in testing that's going on. So I can not only inform the developer of a fix, but I can inform the test profiles to be modified to better anticipate threats in production. And that closed loop works the same, whether it's bugs that are affecting quality and capability, or incidents, threat and security incidents that carry with it all kinds of nasty implications relative to what can happen down the road. The solution looks awfully similar, and that's where the light really went on. Was from talking to you about connecting those things. It's like, well, wait a minute. Security is really just like a bug. It just is a unique instance. It's a really bad bug, and it can be super serious. But at that level, it can be handled the same way. So if you consider that use case of a quality life cycle, and you can think of a security incident as a matter that needs to be dealt with in the same way, the overall architecture, the flow, the orchestration, the automation capabilities, the insights, the reports, all of that value stream management has been building for years now can come to be leveraged to help solve the problem. And this is where it really exploded for me in terms of what, the promise of this could be, solving a real big problem, connecting three large silos: security, DevSecOps, security teams, DevSecOps, and operations. It's just, I think it's natural. And I think that's where we got all excited, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, this workflow that you're showing is basically, typical of what happens in development. It's typical of what happens in, let's say, staging. But this idea of using this and automating this workflow across the deployment boundary, if you like, this is where value stream management gets especially interesting, where you can apply it. Bugs found in production can use the value stream management platforms can automate the workflow all the way back to development and back to production again. That's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, I think so. And then we can, when we start to build it out, there are specific matters within the security world that we might want to care about relative to how we deal with this. This is a very busy slide, Mark, but I think that it's a Bible for you.
Well, this is out of my book, right? This is what I call the continuous security blueprint in my book, Engineering DevOps. So it basically illustrates the breadth and scope of continuous security and all the different major, even though it's an eye chart, it's actually just a summary of so the different stages of the value stream and different tools that can apply. Some of these tools like source scanners, test tools, artifact security control tools help prevent secure vulnerabilities in software prior to deployment to production, but other tools that are used in production and operations secure the operating environment. So with this value stream management platform, you can combine the capabilities of those types of tools and get orchestration and automation equally well across all types of security tools and implement that, that cycle of change and control across the entire value stream from pre-production into production. So this is where it really gets interesting.
Yeah, and I think that, when you dive down into value stream management a little bit more and start to see some of the capabilities, the diagram on the top is kind of a classic, certainly from a Plutora point of view, a classic look at what is going on with value stream management. I think key to this is the common data model and integration, tool integration that sits in the middle. Value stream management and the value stream management platform architecture is designed from the ground up to be able to provide the integration, bidirectional integration across all of the tools that exist from the planning side all the way through to operations. And that's something that we've been building, that the industry's been building, that Forrester 4 or 5 years ago started to define as what value stream management was. It's the notion of being able to bring that data in, normalize and correlate it, and then make it available to be acted upon by all the various tools that are in the scenario. So artifacts can flow automatically, and collaboration is assured, and that's how value stream management was built. So those APIs are there. They're there and they're ready, and there's tools to do the integration. So really, any security tool can be brought in, and we have customers doing that now on all the way through the value stream. So they're really interesting from this perspective, in that they can sit on top of this.
Well, I would add the little part at the bottom of the diagram, and this applies not only to the application value streams, but these days with pipelines as a service and infrastructure as code, the same platform and the same approaches can be applied to these different layers of the value stream, application pipelines and infrastructure, because the bad actors are happy to infiltrate any one of those areas in order to get access to.
Well, by introducing not only the security data, but the various other avenues, pipelines, infrastructure is a great one, as you point out, is really the big hairy goal here. Is if we can leverage the innate capabilities of value stream management, expand it then beyond to the pipelines, the infrastructure, in addition to the applications, it really unlocks unmatched visibility that I think could make a huge difference all the way through the pipeline. And in fact, we have some use cases here to just kind of step through that shows you how it might look from the eyeballs associated with that graph on the bottom, from folks that are involved in planning all the way to folks that are involved in operations and everything in between. How would this use case actually come to life? And Mark, you have some great shots here. Why don't you kind of talk us through some of these?
Yeah, these are just some example use cases. So at the front end of the value stream, where you're doing planning and design and change management, the value stream management platforms can integrate planning and design and change management tools equally well. So planning tools like Cyber Planner, ServiceNow, Jira, all those types of things can integrate business data, and the security user stories, for example, can be captured in the backlogs and drive development priorities. And so something that happened in production could become a priority that will end up in a development backlog. The design tools, things like threat modeling, that can be used in combination with security teams. Different design practices for security, the different frameworks, open source scanners, things like Continuum Security, Threat Modeler, Black Duck. These are just examples of tools that are concerned, that you typically are using in the design phase to make sure that you're choosing components that don't have too many security vulnerabilities. And if you want to be aware of what you're choosing as part of your product, that can be built into the design process and mitigated during the design. And then change management tools, again, like ServiceNow, Jira, Raleigh, Service Desk, they allow those stories to be tracked throughout the entire value stream. The point is that use cases exist even at the front end of the value stream that are really important to security, and integrating these tools during the early stage value streams of, again, the application pipelines and infrastructure as code enables coordination, orchestration of those controls during later stages of the value stream.
Yeah, and it's cool because it meets each of these enterprises where they are, meaning that they're using whatever the tools they're using, some combination of all those that you mentioned. This solution can work. It doesn't require that you standardize on one or the other. The security tools, the capabilities, the development tools that are most suited to your style of work and to your history with respect to how your organization has grown are all completely suitable to be incorporated into this solution and continuous security enabled by value stream management platforms. That's one of the cool things about it.
Yeah.
And there, we can go on, down the various other use cases all the way down into the development phase.
Yeah, so the development phase, this is the traditional, if you like, CI/CD, but it can be a little extended because typically CI is after development, if you like, in the sense that the code is already created and people are committing the code. So security access controls, the secure design practices, what's called pre-flight, prior to integration, testing, continuous integration, and all the different steps within this continuous integration, including locking down the artifacts that have been validated through scans, continuous delivery practices, again, using, lockdown artifacts for testing, and then extending the testing for more security use cases, and all the different monitoring and development pipelines as infrastructures, as well as the application. So a lot of things are in this phase that are very security controls, and can be orchestrated, automated with the value stream management platform with those tools integrated. So the integration with scanners and things like, composition analysis tools, SAS, security tools, static analysis, dynamic analysis, IaaS, RASP, all these different types of tools, as well as penetration test automation and things like that. All of the different tools and test platforms can be integrated at this stage, together with monitoring analysis to give you a more holistic view of what's happening from a security point of view. Give you more visibility.
And as these not only all covered by the platform, but that integration allows the analysis and the monitoring that you know to take into effect all the data from across the entire value stream. So I can not only see the incidents and see the test information as you described, but I can associate those with the various releases, epics, and stories, so that I can understand exactly how I'm doing relative to achieving the strategic goals of the company by delivering the epics and capabilities that we've planned to do, and make sure that they're being done securely. I think that's a real win here for this. And it just keeps going as we start to get into deployment. This is where it gets real. So we start to cross over the boundary between dev and the world of operations, which seems to me to be a major boundary or silo barrier relative to the two capabilities. So this is an important part right here.
Yeah, this is where the rubber hits the road, where dev hits
Yeah,
ops, and
yeah,
there's a lot of concern about from both sides. Dev wants to get deployments quickly, and ops wants those deployments to work well in production and be safe and secure. So here, you can apply orchestration automation to the packaging processes for the releases, um, the security metrics, and how you're determining whether or not a release is good enough from a security metrics point of view that have been accumulated throughout the value stream up to that point. And secure deployments, making sure that as the deployments occur, they're using immutable structures and things that are um, best practice for security. Make sure you're deploying things that have already been scanned and you know it. And of course, then obviously monitoring as well as the releases are
right.
deployed, then you're keeping track of how they're performing from a security point of view. Are there any new events or that are occurring as you deploy the, hopefully gradually deploy out to your production environment? So the security controls here in this phase as well, value stream management can orchestrate and automate those processes and workflows. Some of the same tools can apply, some of the other tools can apply that are specific to that phase. And of course, the monitoring can be analyzed, and the analysis integrated with looking for those things that are considered to be the highest risk for any particular release that have come up as a result of the metrics earlier in the value stream. In general, orchestrating whatever the release criteria is according to security data is a key part of this phase.
Mm-hmm. And I think the secret sauce of value stream management platforms, from my perspective, has always been rooted in the common data model. That I can bring all that data in, and now I can do that monitoring and analysis off of that data, taking into account all the relevant information. In this case, the deployment capabilities, but I can also see all the way back to the plan. I can see to the front. So my point is that the analytics and monitoring can be served up in the way that the person doing the monitoring itself sees exactly what they want to see. So it's the same data set, so very large common data model, but I can look at the analytics from all sorts of different ways, in this case from an operation and deployment perspective. So it's real powerful to be able to see that information any way I choose based on my agenda, based on my goals as a part of the value stream. So finally we get into operations. And this is perhaps a more understood thing from the standpoint of SIEM, but why don't we look at this from the continuous security point of view?
Right. So in operations, the tactics tend to be more defensive in nature. So things like zero trust access management controls, if you have concerns arising from that, then they can create user stories and issues for development that can be pushed back into the front end of a value stream to be taken care of. Similarly, with anything coming out of security monitors, generally speaking, any automated responses that come out of the SIEM tools or SOARs or XDRs can also be integrated in with the development for ongoing improvements. Some of the more advanced practices, like applying chaos engineering to security, the results of that also can be fed back into the front end of the value stream as cases to be prioritized in development. The results of things like red teams, purple teams, generally all the governance and compliance over security policies can be automated with value stream management platforms. In general, the value stream management platform can help again with integrating these types of tools and protections, monitoring, as well as the orchestration aspects, and getting the data for governance and security is critical as well for ongoing analysis and understanding and continuous improvement, because the bad actors don't stand still. They're constantly looking for new ways to take advantage of the situation.
Absolutely. And I'm seeing it, like I said in the beginning, we're seeing it more and more and more every week. And with RSA coming up, there's going to be a lot of topics. So I'm interested in really pushing this thought, because I think it's really important to be able to span all this entire value stream from, like we've been talking, from the time the idea is conceived to the time it's being used in production and monitored. That all the dots need to be connected, and then the dashboards can be configured in any number of ways to deal with the security initiatives from all those different spots, as I was saying earlier, from the DevSec perspective, DevSecOps perspective, to the operations perspective. So let's start to look at what those dashboards might look like, Mark. I mean, and here we can dive into this a little bit. Oops.
Yeah, at the last webinar, we went into this in some detail. The general idea is you for continuous security, you want a dashboard that's got visibility across, again, the whole value stream from DevSecOps level development environments, as well as the ops and SRE side with production environments. That requires more than a typical SIEM dashboard. It's something that has got a broader scope. So at the highest level, an enterprise continuous security architecture requires a smart UI layer that can consume security data from many sources, from both the DevSecOps side and the SRE production side, and then organize those into display formats and APIs that can suit the needs of different stakeholders to serve all the different use cases that we just talked about. For example, obviously an executive, for example, wants strategic level summaries to direct applications, but the practitioners want more of a, something that's more directly related to their day-to-day work when they get those directions. The underlying layers need to be comprehensive enough to collect data from across the entire value stream, from the application side, infrastructure, and the pipelines themselves. So really need a comprehensive solution. And this again is where I was struck by the architecture of the value stream management platforms and how they fit this architecture almost like a one-to-one basis.
I mean, if you were building a platform to manage this process, you'd build it pretty much the way value stream management's built. So it really, it's like a hand in glove. In fact, we can look at an example of what the power might be, and we have you can see in the upper right that this dashboard's actually a little long. So we're looking at the top half. You would scroll down, you can make these as big or as small, and these widgets can be moved in and out according to what you might want to see. What we're really showing here is some monitoring capabilities of the overall threat that's going on in production. So on the top of the dashboard here, you're looking at threat sources and how it breaks down over time as far as what's going on in production. But as we come to, and that's a SIEM dashboard. This information you might be familiar with if you have, a SIEM, SolarWinds, or something of that nature that you're doing in monitoring in production. You probably have similar, graphs to this. But we starts to get a little interesting as we move down this a little bit. And I think I can see everything there. Yeah. So this is, you can see the very top, the threats there that we're seeing half of the little donut graphs. But we start to get down, you say, okay, well, if those are the threats, how's our work breakdown? Are we spending time building out, defense? Are we spending too much time? Are we not getting new features in? So we can start to monitor the impact of looking at those threats, remediating those threats, along with other tasks that development needs to do, and see how my teams are actually working, whether they're spending too much time on technical debt and risk analysis, or whether they're not. And you can see with threats rise that you're going to see greater risk efforts going on, which could slow down development on features. So you can start to see the give and take between the remediation and the development and how that's affecting your teams. Moreover, if I look to the right of that in the matrix, what I'm looking at there is the association of the various threats that are existing that I'm seeing through the monitoring and production with the actual releases and the builds that are associated with those releases. And that's an artifact that gets assigned to that. And you can even start to look at where the defects lie and how they're linked to the threats in production. So I can start to map, okay, here are the defects. These are all the threats that has an impact on. Moreover, I can start to look at the security scan results of the applications where there are threats and understand how those tests were run and whether or not they could be improved by virtue of a better set of monitoring. And then I can also look at that and say, okay, are we affecting quality at all? As I make changes on that, am I inserting other problems? What am I doing? Because I still have to deliver high quality software and I still want to deliver it fast. So I still care about all that. as you said, Mark, earlier, I need to be able to execute on the strategy, on my security strategies at the speed of DevOps, at the speed of Agile. So I'm going to see the threats. I want to remediate them. I want it to be fast. I want to be able to see how that's affecting my teams. I want to know how the threats are affecting the key applications of my business, where they're showing up, and whether or not I'm testing appropriately to make sure that I continuously improve. That's ultimately one of the biggest goals of value stream management, is continuous improvement. And in security, there's no greater good than making sure that I continually improve, lock out the bad actors, get better and better at security, tighten my software, and be able to do it at the speed of DevOps, and being able to collaborate, to have visibility into where the threats are immediately, without having to have a meeting, without having to have a daily trip through the logs. It comes up, I'm alerted, I'm able to start to deal with the problems right away, and cross the barrier between what's going on in production all the way back to what's going on in dev. And I think it's an incredibly powerful solution. Any comments on this particular dashboard, Mark, before we move on?
Well, I'm just going to comment on the speed of DevOps point, because some security issues come up and they're urgent and they need that rapid response in terms of implementing and then orchestrating all of the processes needed to get the fix or patch into maybe new or maybe an existing one into a deployment. But just the volume of activity as well across the many pipelines and value streams associated with modern services says that there's an ongoing need for quick responses to close the ones that, even if you're not experiencing an urgent attack, to support the volume of change with incremental change deployment strategies requires an efficient solution that's an end-to-end solution. So this is where the idea of monitoring the full suite of problems that are happening in production or could potentially affect production, and then orchestrating that all the way, the fixes all the way through the value streams, the various value streams, the many value streams in enterprises, is important.
Yeah, and it's not only the many. That's certainly true. There's tons of value streams, but not all value streams, not all releases are created equal. As you point out, there's Sev 1 problems that need to get fixed yesterday. And there's other things that are maybe more on the annoyance part, where we have workarounds, but we really ought to tighten it up so we can incorporate that into a bit broader release, maybe not treat it as a Sev 1. And value stream management has built into it the capability to understand that not all releases are created equal, that there are definite differences in the way things get orchestrated and alerted and monitored. And the analysis that's associated with value stream management lends itself to understanding the nuances between those releases and how well they're doing. I apply security to this, and the value stream management platform shrugs and says, that's no problem. I do that every day, all day anyway. So it's just, again, the fit is like hand in glove. It's an amazing use case of value stream management that just kind of, really is blown up here, for at least for me, in understanding how valuable it can be in the last 6 months or so in working with you on this, Mark. So it's pretty exciting. And I think that we can go to our second survey here, and then we'll be able to wrap up. And that is, now that we've had a chance to look at continuous security solutions, see how they cover orchestration and automation, what extent does your organization need that? What do you think? Is this an idea that you're going, wow, this is good? Maybe you don't know. Maybe it's like, oh no, this is a major requirement, or some element in between, somewhat important, or maybe no, we don't need it at all. I'd be interested into how you're reacting to the concept and whether or not this is something you're going to want to dig into, because we'd love to chat with you more about it. So let's go ahead and get some of that data. Mark, what would you think here? I think the light bulb's going to be going on for people, is what I would expect.
Yeah, I'm not sure a lot of people have yet understood that they have major requirements, but I believe that, with considerable thought, they'll think of use cases that are major requirements. But at least I would say the bulk will at this point understand why there's some important requirements for this continuous security. So I would imagine most people are going to answer 3, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, and there you were. Look at
Okay.
that, 42% right there. And actually, look at that, a third of the folks, major requirements. So you're looking at either some or major requirements of 75%. So I think Mark, you're onto something. Let's continue talking about this. I think we can get even more pragmatic about bringing solutions to the market and helping people understand. And there's maybe an assessment, requirements checklist you want to look at. Mark, this is classic from your consulting practice. What have you got here with the solution requirements?
Yeah, you're right. In my consulting, I do a lot of these kinds of analysis tools and so on. This is a summary of how you might assess your need for, continuous security value stream management platform. So what are the features you ought to look for? So a pretty high level at this point for the presentation, but it gives you an idea. You're looking for analysis and inference capabilities that can apply across the different tool sets in the value stream. The ability to run a wide variety of AppSec tools from a single platform. Automation orchestration capabilities that will reduce the workload of developers and security and ops folks. The ability to sift through duplicate results and project, the real view of false positives, false negatives, and eliminate and reduce them. Being able to remediate issues locally and efficiently rather than having to go off some other tools to do that. The ability to move faster without sacrificing quality through, a lot of the orchestration of testing and test automation that go together with this. Consistently and cost efficiency requirements through having a common platform rather than trying to address this problem by many different platforms. It gets difficult to build end-to-end use cases with. Generally speaking, a platform that gives you some commonality to harmonize activities between development, sec, and ops teams for the different value streams, and an ability to automate your security governance and compliance processes as well. So there's a lot of things you're looking for in a value stream management platform to address the different kinds of classes of issues associated with security these days, especially in the complex cases like value stream or supply chain attacks. In general, it's going to give you a lot of benefits with improved consistency, optimized application security across pipelines, centralized control, better development and pipeline management, faster, security processes, and improved, collaboration between development ops and security teams.
Yeah. And I think the VSM platform that we've been talking about satisfies all this. So once I understand where I'm at, that would inform me on maybe what tools I would use, how I would connect them up. I mean, there's some decisions as to the implementation and how I would actually work it. And Mark, I suppose that's where you would come in with your consulting practice to give people some sense of how they might piece this together, how they might evaluate a value stream management platform that optimizes maybe more perfectly than another on solving these problems. I mean, there's definitely some more things we could chat about, but I think this gives you a vector, a pointer into where you want to go, and start to develop a solution to get continuous improvement over your security capabilities across your entire value stream. So we're kind of nearing the end. We just have a couple slides to wrap up, and we'll let you go here in a couple of minutes. Mark, there was some key takeaways.
So real quick, I think the idea is you've now got some information to think about, how continuous security, can provide visibility and over complex security cases like supply chain attacks, and looking at the problem as a series of value streams is an important concept, I think, is a takeaway. The idea that value stream management platforms, which already exist, are uniquely positioned to provide, the orchestration, automation, visibility capabilities that will satisfy the different use cases for continuous security. And, take a look at the tool. I have more expanded ones on my website. And you're welcome to talk to me about how you can determine, your current state for continuous security and how to build, a roadmap towards a continuous security solution. No doubt this is not a trivial topic. It does require a carefully built roadmap in order to, get to a solution quickly and without wasting a lot of time.
But it's encouraging to see that the platforms are available to allow you to get there, and the technology is in the market, and things are available to be able to connect the dots on the security value stream. And this is if you'd like to learn more about Plutora and what our value stream management capability can provide. I would welcome you to go to the website. You'll see this diagram, which gives you a block diagram view of what's going on inside our platform. You can see the things we talked about with the integrations to the tools, as well as the orchestration all the way up through the monitoring. So we have it. We have plenty of materials up there. And again, please go up to the ebook. You can download that. Michelle pushed it out earlier in the webinar. And as I mentioned, this ebook that's on the slide is the first one. We have a second one that Mark is putting the finishing touches on, and it'll be available in a few weeks, and we'll make sure you all get a copy of that as well. And with that, we are at the end of our webinar, right at the top of the hour.
Well, outstanding. Mark and Bob, thank you both so much for being here with us and sharing your expertise. I'd like to quickly remind our audience that this panel was recorded. You'll receive an email with a link to access the recording on demand. You can also find it living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars. So we do have those 4 gift cards to give away real quick. Our first winner is Jim S. Our second winner is Ramkumari I. Our third winner is Judy K. And our fourth and final winner is Suraj E. So to the 4 of you, congratulations. Keep an eye on your inbox to claim that gift card. And if you don't receive an email, just check your spam folder. I would like to thank Plutora for sponsoring today's webinar. And my final thanks before we close goes to you, our audience. Thank you so much for being here with us. We ask for 1 extra moment of your time to fill out a brief post-webinar survey that'll pop up on your screen here in just a moment. But otherwise, we do hope to see you in an upcoming Techstrong Learning webinar. Everyone, have a great rest of your day. And Mark and Bob, thank you once again.
Thank you, Cody. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank everyone. Bye-bye.